Hey friends, welcome back to Grand Adventure. I'm your host Mark Guido, and for RV camping, this week we are going to try out the Advanced Elements Advanced Frame Convertible Inflatable Kayak, so stay tuned. Our Grand Adventurers already know that I'm an avid kayaker and I prefer the performance of a hardshell kayak. I like a long touring kayak for stability and tracking, and I like them long, narrow, and fast. However, there's a lot to be said for an inflatable kayak. For one thing, you don't have to travel around with it strapped to the roof of your vehicle. It makes it a lot easier to travel if you're pulling a towable RV. You could just throw one of these in your back seat or in the bed of the truck, as we've been doing, and travel around with it and inflate it and deflate it when necessary. But the question is, can the performance of an inflatable kayak even come close to that of a hardshell kayak? So we wanted to find out, so we went and bought the Advanced Frame Convertible Kayak from Advanced Elements, and if any inflatable kayak has a chance to even come close to the performance, I believe it's this one. For one thing, it has aluminum stays in both the bow and the stern so that it cuts more effectively through the water. It's 15 feet long, which is the length of any good touring kayak. It's only 12 inches shorter than my Eddieline Fathom. However, it does have some disadvantages to try to overcome. For one thing, it's a lot beamier. It's about 32 inches wide. Now, that's about 10 inches wider than both our current and our previous boats. So it's going to be a little bit slower cutting through the water because it's 10 inches more beam on the boat. It also, for lack of a better term, an inflatable kayak's material is not as slippery in the water as that of a hardshell kayak. So it does have some challenges, and we'll see how it handles those challenges. It weighs in at 52 pounds, which is only 2 pounds more than my Eddieline Fathom. The reason we bought this particular boat is for its versatility. It may be used as either a single or a tandem, so one or two people may paddle the boat. That gives me the ability to get out on the lake with Mrs. Grand Adventure, where we can paddle it as a tandem. Or I can even try and get our dog Zoe to see if she'll take a ride in the boat with me. In addition, I have the ability to use it as a single anytime I need a quick fix or get the boat out on the water, or I can loan it to a friend if they want to get out and kayak with me as I'm in the Eddieline. In addition to that, Mrs. Grand Adventure much prefers an open cockpit design, whereas I prefer a closed cockpit. And the beauty of this Advanced Elements inflatable kayak is it may be used in either of those combinations. Understand, this video is not sponsored in any way. We found a heck of a deal on this kayak this spring, so we went and bought it. But we haven't yet had the chance to use it. But now that we're here camping on Topaz Lake in western Nevada, this gives us the chance to use the kayak right from our campsite. So what better time than now to try it out? It's a good idea to note the way that the boat is folded into the bag at the factory to ensure that you can return the boat into the bag the same way once it dries out after paddling. Here on top is the thwart, which we'll place aside for a moment, and the seats. Let's see if there's anything else hidden down here. Nope, so let's get the boat itself out of the bag. The kayak is pre-assembled at the factory to simplify inflation. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, and for the life of me, I don't understand why manufacturers, including those who make tents and sleeping bags, can't make storage bags that are just slightly oversized. So the kayak is folded in thirds laterally and in half longitudinally. Now we're ready to start inflating. Advanced Elements uses these spring valves on the two main air chambers. You insert your finger and rotate clockwise to lock the spring down for unobstructed airflow, or counterclockwise to release the spring so that sufficiently pressured air can enter but not escape. We're locking it down for the initial inflation with a 12-volt air pump. This pump isn't sufficient to finish the job, but it does the initial heavy lifting. You still need to use a hand pump to finish things off to achieve the necessary final pressure. It's also not sufficient to overcome the spring valve's action. This is not a time lapse. This is a look at the inflation in real time using the 12-volt pump. We only want to inflate until the boat starts taking shape, which would require around 55 strokes with our hand pump, so the 12-volt inflator is not essential. We'll now do the same with the second main air chamber. We'll now use the Advanced Elements double action hand pump to bring the second main air chamber up to the desired 2 psi. This pump provides 4,000 cc's per full cycle stroke. It locks onto the spring valve and is capable of overcoming the pressure of the spring in the valve. The hand pump has a built-in pressure gauge to ensure proper inflation. The third inflation step is to inflate the kayak floor to 1 psi. The floor has a pressure relief valve to avoid damage from overinflation. You can see from the label, visible in the center of this view, that this kayak has a maximum capacity of 500 pounds for 2 people, or 550 pounds for people plus gear when properly inflated. We'll add a quick stroke or two to chambers 5 and 6 for the desired deck lift. Not shown here, we'll also inflate the thwart. Finally, we'll insert the plastic stiffeners into the pockets at bow and stern. Here we have the boat ready to go on the water in the tandem configuration with an open cockpit.
So if I wanted to go paddling right now, I could use that exactly the way we just set it up. However, there were a few optional accessories that I wanted to add to enhance this boat even more for us. One is this is a single closed cockpit cover. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a moment, but it'll show you how I convert this to a single boat with a closed cockpit rather than an open cockpit. I also wanted some adjustable foot pegs, either for when I'm using it single or for myself when I'm paddling with Mrs. Grand Adventure. Finally, this is extremely important from what we're told. This is a drop stitch floor. This adds an enormous amount of rigidity to the floor that's already in the boat to make the boat behave a lot more like a hardshell kayak.
Here we have the single closed cockpit installed. You can see that it has a dual chamber inflatable cockpit coaming to accommodate a spray skirt. It also adds some additional foredeck bungee for carrying gear on deck, as well as a roll-top cargo access hatch behind the seat. Note that this is only a rear cargo access, and the boat does not include a dry bulkhead between the seat and the cargo area. Here we've installed the adjustable foot pegs, which function nearly identically to those found on a hardshell kayak. And here's the drop stitch floor. We're demonstrating it here, but it needs to be inserted into the boat prior to the main inflation process. It's inflated to 6 psi and is extremely rigid, much like an inflatable paddleboard. This makes the entire boat overall much stiffer and adds chines below the waterline.
I will say it's true that drop stitch floor really does add a lot of rigidity to the boat. We'll have to get it out in the water and see how it performs.
I've quickly discovered that my existing spray skirt is just a hair too small to fit easily around the kayak's inflatable cockpit coaming. If I want to use a spray skirt with this boat, I'll need to purchase a slightly larger one. I've been a naysayer about inflatable kayaks for years, and I must admit, this actually does perform surprisingly well. I find the tracking, at least right now when we don't have a lot of wind, I find the tracking to be fairly true. It doesn't tend to wobble a lot on forward strokes. I'm actually reasonably impressed, and I believe that the versatility of this boat will serve us well. I'll mention a couple of things that I really don't care for. For one thing, it is awfully beamy, and I'm finding that my paddle strokes are actually rubbing along the side of the boat because a lot of it's me. I'm not used to a 32-inch wide hull. Now, one thing that from a design perspective, they put these paddle holders on the sides of the boat, and quite frankly, I do find my paddling rubbing against those paddle holders. It would be nice if they didn't have them there. I think they made a mistake in the design in that respect. I've also found that the seat could be a little better designed as well. I wish there were some Velcro on the floor. I may add some to keep the seat, the bottom portion of the seat in place when entering the boat. It has a tendency to slide forward as you're trying to get into the cockpit, at least when it's in this closed cockpit configuration. And then I find myself having to squirm and kind of reposition the seat a little bit. So that's another negative. But these are small quibbles. Like I said, overall, the boat does exceed my expectations for paddling performance. For somebody in an RV where space is at a premium and you don't want to rack some giant touring kayak on the roof, this is a viable option, especially because you can use it as a single, you can use it as a tandem, you can use it as an open cockpit or as a closed cockpit. You're never going to find that kind of versatility in a hardshell boat. So we hope that you found our experience with the Advanced Elements Advanced Frame Convertible Inflatable Kayak useful to you. If you like this episode, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up down below. And while you're down below, that's where you'll find the comments section. It's where we love to hear from you after each grand adventure and where we are available to answer your questions about this kayak. Coming up next week, we're going to share this area with you. We are in Topaz Lake in western Nevada, just south of Carson City. So if you're not yet a grand adventurer yourself, now is the perfect time for you to go smash that little subscribe button right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And ring that notification bell to be sure that you never miss a grand adventure, which we air every Wednesday evening. Finally, we'd be truly honored if you shared the channel with your friends, family, and on social media. So until next Wednesday, please remember life is nothing but a grand adventure. We'll see you then.